You know that deep mechanical hum right before a machine decides it's had enough of existence. That low, uneven vibration that tells you something catastrophic is seconds away. That sound followed me every day at Norcrest Dynamics. Most people hear noise. I hear warnings. My name is Marion Holt. I'm 61 years old, and my right shoulder permanently dips lower from nearly 34 years spent leaning over industrial control panels. I carry what corporate recruiters like to call institutional intelligence, right up until they decide it's too expensive to keep me around. It was a Thursday. Thursdays inside a steel fabrication plant in northern Ohio smell like scorched wiring and overheated coolant. It's not something you'll ever find bottled in a department store, but honestly, it smells better than the fear leaking off the newly appointed management team. I was stationed at Bay 7 on Assembly Track B. Track B is my nightmare. She's a 22-year old Virex automated press system that throws off its calibration whenever indoor humidity drops below 38%. I don't need a monitor to tell me that. I feel it through the concrete. The vibration shifts, smooth cadence to drunken shuffle. I was adjusting a proximity sensor. Exactly 1/8 of a turn, no more. Because anything tighter sends the laser reader into a meltdown. That's when I felt it. A presence, not the heavy, deliberate steps of a floor supervisor in composite boots. This was faster, lighter, nervous, the unmistakable rhythm of luxury dress shoes that had never met factory dust. You're standing inside a restricted safety lane, I said without turning. Unless you're certified for live systems, you're about 2 steps away from invalidating your benefits package. Marion Holt. A voice replied. The legacy consultant. I turned. It was Evan Caldwell, our freshly installed director of operational transformation, mid-30s, perfect haircut, teeth so white they looked artificial. His blazer probably cost more than my first apartment deposit. He held a tablet like it contained sacred scripture and stared at my oil-stained coveralls with thinly veiled disdain. Systems specialist. I corrected, wiping synthetic grease onto a rag older than his career. And you must be the efficiency prophet corporate heir. Rob to tell us how to do more with fewer people. He laughed. The sound was hollow, like shaking dry rice in a tin can. Evan, he said, extending a hand that had never lifted anything heavier than a briefcase. I didn't shake it. I raised my wrench instead. He hesitated, then casually wiped his palm on his trousers. And actually, he said, my title is Head of Modernization Strategy. We're here to realign operations. Realign, I repeated. The word tasted metallic. Is that corporate slang for breaking things that still work? He smiled the way consultants do when they think they're smarter than everyone else in the room. That's the difference between legacy thinking and forward vision. He said, you see stability. I see inefficiency. He tapped his tablet. You spend roughly 43% of your shift manually intervening on track B. That's lost productivity. We need automation that replaces human correction entirely. I stared at him. I wanted to explain that track B wasn't just equipment. It was decades of layered fixes, unsupported firmware, and undocumented workarounds. That the manufacturer stopped issuing updates back when Clinton was still in office. That my manual adjustments were the only thing stopping a total shutdown, but he wasn't listening. He was tuned into the internal podcast in his head, where he's the hero saving quarterly margins. We've got a briefing in 25 minutes, Evan said, glancing at his tablet. Senior technical staff only. I'll be presenting the new roadmap. I'll attend, I replied, as soon as I convince this press not to shred the next shipment of alloy sheets. He stepped away carefully, lifting his foot over a coiled air hose like it might bite him. I watched him leave, and something twisted in my gut. Not stress, not burnout, something colder. The same feeling you get watching dark clouds roll in from the lakes. Low, heavy, unavoidable. I finished the adjustment. The line settled. The vibration smoothed into a perfect rhythm. It was beautiful. I rested my palm against the safety cage. Easy, I murmured. I won't let the polished man break you. On my way to the conference room, I stopped at my locker. Behind a stack of obsolete control system manuals retired in 2014, I kept something small, a USB drive, a contingency I'd never needed, until now. It was a full ghost image of the plant's control logic. Every workaround, every undocumented fix, every fragile line of code holding this place together. I stared at it, then, for the first time in 6 years, I slipped it into my pocket. It felt heavier than it should have. Like leverage, the conference room was chilled to an uncomfortable 69 degrees F. The rest of the old guard was already seated. Present in the room were Carlos from Facilities, Lena from Quality Assurance, and Big Ron Matthews, the production supervisor. They all had the same look, exhausted, guarded. The look of people who knew cuts were coming, but didn't yet know whose badge would stop working first. Evan Caldwell stood at the head of the table. Behind him, a glowing presentation pulsed with corporate buzzwords: integration, scalability, right-sizing. "Welcome, everyone," Evan said brightly. He didn't sit. He paced. "I've spent the last 14 days observing operations." He continued, and frankly, I'm alarmed, shocked even, by how dependent this facility is on what I'd call informal knowledge. He said informal knowledge the same way someone might say contamination. This plant has critical dependencies tied to individual people. Evan went on, his eyes sliding toward me. If Marion is unavailable, Track B stalls. If Carlos decides to take early retirement, climate control becomes a guessing game. That's unacceptable operational exposure. The room went still. We are transitioning to a fully standardized cloud, integrated control environment. He announced, no more manual interventions, no more personal overrides. We are digitizing the floor. Carlos raised his hand. His fingers were thick, scarred from decades of real work. "With respect, sir," he said carefully, "the software doesn't know that the seals on Press 5 expand differently in February than they do in August. The sensors miss that, we don't." Evan smiled. "It was polished, empty. That's exactly the issue." Evan replied, "You're relying on intuition. We need metrics, and we're getting them." He tapped the tablet again. "Effective immediately. All vendor contracts and labor allocations are under review. We're eliminating redundancies." Silence. The HVAC whispered overhead. I sat motionless, one hand in my jacket pocket, fingers brushing the smooth plastic of the USB drive. "Marion," Evan said. The room seemed to shrink. "Since your role revolves around maintaining outdated systems, and since those systems are being retired, Human Resources will be meeting with you today to discuss next steps." "Next steps," I echoed. "It's procedural," he said dismissively. "But your compensation tier represents a luxury we can't justify anymore. We don't need artisans, we need operators." I didn't react, didn't argue, didn't explode. I simply nodded, understood. I said, my voice didn't shake. That surprised even me. "Excellent." Evan clapped his hands once. "Out with the old, forward with the future." Meeting adjourned. As everyone filed out, Carlos squeezed my shoulder. His jaw was tight. "This is garbage," he muttered. "It's fine." I replied, a thin, dangerous smile touching my lips. "He wants modernization. Let's show him what the plant looks like without the people who actually know it." I returned to my workstation, a cluttered corner of the engineering bay stacked with schematics, binders, and half-forgotten coffee cups. Evan thought he'd terminated an employee. What he'd really done was remove the control rods from a reactor. I logged in, muscle memory took over, commands flowed, files copied, archives encrypted, status complete. I wasn't stealing anything. I was collecting my personal work. If my personal work happened to include the only functional logic map holding Norcrest dynamics together, well, that was just history. The factory floor vibrated beneath me. It sounded, restrained, like something holding its breath. "You wanted the keys," I whispered. "Let's see if you know how to drive." The HR office smelled like artificial vanilla, the universal scent of corporate endings. Located in Norcrest's administrative tower, it felt physically attached to the plant but culturally light. Years away. Gray carpet, beige walls, dead eyes. Across from me sat Evan and Rachel, an HR associate who looked barely old enough to rent a car. As discussed, Evan began, leaning back comfortably, the transition to Industry 4.0 makes your skill set obsolete, I repeated. You're like a rotary phone in a smartphone era, he said, clearly pleased with himself. I see, I replied. So 34 years of maintaining 99.7% uptime qualifies as a rotary phone. Exactly, he said, pointing like I'd solved a riddle. We need agility, your contract is. Heavy. Rachel slid a document toward me. 2 weeks of severance for every 6 years of service, she said quietly, conditional on asset handover and non-disclosure. The number was insulting. Barely enough to replace a transmission. Certainly not enough to fix the joints ruined by decades on concrete. And handover, I asked. You want me to train my replacement? Evan laughed. We have documentation. We have schematics. We don't need folklore. The new team starts Monday, fully certified. He stood, walked to a shredder, and lifted a folder labeled Contract Extension Proposal. This was your renewal, he said pleasantly. Digitization is cleaner. He fed it into the machine. Paper vanished. So did my loyalty. If he'd shown restrained respect, I might have warned him about Press 6 overheating, about the rooftop cooling pumps needing manual resets after storms. But watching my future turn to confetti ended that thought. I signed, didn't read it. Badge, please, Rachel whispered. I placed my old ID on the desk. Then my company phone, then my keys, server rooms, electrical cages, lift controls. That's everything. I said it wasn't. The USB drive felt warm in my pocket. Security will escort you out, Evan said. Standard. I stood, my knees cracked, good luck. I told him the machines have moods. They're machines, he scoffed. They obey code, yes. I said softly, they do. The walk to the parking lot felt endless. A young guard named Ethan walked beside me, ashamed. Sorry, Marion, he muttered. This is wrong. Don't worry, I said, putting on my sunglasses. I'm sure Evan will optimize the breaker panel too. I climbed into my rusted pickup and sat there for a moment. Then I opened my personal phone, accessed a secure remote node, admin Ghost Online. I didn't touch anything, not yet. Revenge is an instant, it simmers. I drove away without looking back. I gave the system 3 days. I was wrong, it only took 2. The documentation lists M. Holt as the system architect. One of the IT analysts said quietly, another account references her. But it's been deleted. A pause, then, who has the master keys? No one answered. Because they didn't have them, I did. And at that exact moment, I was sitting on a wooden porch in Harbor Springs, roughly 320 miles away, watching a seagull aggressively steal fries from an unattended basket while I drank a cup of tea that, mercifully, didn't taste like industrial coolant. Back at Norcrest Dynamics, Evan Caldwell stormed into the server room. Why is Track 2 offline? He snapped. I promised corporate a 12% efficiency jump by midday. We're locked out, the IT lead stammered. There's something embedded in the system, a legacy partition that governs timing logic. We can't override it without root authorization. Then crack it. Evan barked. It's code, brute. Force the damn thing. If we do that. The tech warned we risk corrupting the safety kernel. The entire control stack could freeze. I don't care. Evan snapped. We're bleeding money. Disable the safeguards if you have to. Just get production moving. Oh, Evan. You earnest, overdressed fool. Bypassing safety logic on a live manufacturing line is like removing the brakes from a freight train because they're slowing you down. You'll gain speed. Briefly. The stop, however, will be unforgettable. My phone buzzed on the porch. Admin Ghost Alert Safety Overrides Initiated Thermal Limits Disabled. Press 5 Collision Detection Disabled. Track 2. I stared at the screen. He actually did it. I took another sip of tea. I could have stopped it. One command, one tap. I could have restored the locks, but he'd shredded my contract. He'd dismissed my life's work as dead weight. All right, I murmured, let it happen. I set the phone down and went inside to make a sandwich. You know that sound when hardened steel meets something it absolutely shouldn't. It's not loud at first, it's sharp, teeth aching. It's the sound of a year's salary evaporating in a fraction of a second. At 1:12 p.m., track 2 restarted. Evan stood above the floor on the gantry, arms folded, announcing proudly, "Innovation requires courage. Trust the system." The robotic arms surged to life, freed from the bloated safety checks that verified position every 5 milliseconds. For about 90 seconds it worked. Then a sensor failed at Station 5. Under my architecture, that failure would trigger a soft halt. Slow down, recheck, neutral park, 10 seconds, safe, annoying, but safe. Evan had disabled that. So when the sensor misreported a chassis position, the system assumed compliance. The robotic welder swung forward at nearly 6 feet per second. The chassis wasn't there. The hydraulic clamp was. The impact sheared a titanium fastener clean off and bent the robot's primary axle. The crack sounded like a rifle shot. Hydraulic fluid sprayed across the aisle like arterial blood. The machine seized. A fire alarm screamed as fluid ignited on a hot weld tip. Fire on track 2. Carlos shouted, grabbing an extinguisher. Foam flooded the area, ruining thousands in raw materials. Evan didn't move. The efficiency miracle had become a disaster. The damage report followed. Robotic axis unit destroyed $24,800 hydraulic clamp assembly total loss $7,200 downtime estimate minimum 52 hours. Then the red phone rang. The executive line, CEO Martin Kessler. A man who didn't understand code, but absolutely understood dashboards. Why is production showing 0? Kessler demanded. And why did I just receive an automated fire suppression alert? Evan stammered. We encountered a minor anomaly during migration, a sensor. Kessler snapped. We replaced those last quarter. Marion Holt signed off on them. She said they were stable for years. The name landed hard. Well, Marion isn't here to confirm, Evan tried. Did her configuration mask a defect? Kessler asked, or manage one? Silence. You told me she was redundant. Kessler continued coldly. Right now that redundancy is costing me $28,000 an hour. It's a hiccup, Evan said weakly. We'll recover by second shift. You will, Kessler growled. Because if we miss Friday's shipment, it won't be sensors we replace. Click, fix it. Evan snarled at the IT team. Why didn't the override work? It did, the tech whispered. It followed your instructions, but right before failure, the system tried to execute a fallback routine. What routine? Safety Core v4, it's old. But access was denied, author permissions revoked. Author, Evan demanded. Who authored it? The tech swallowed, Marion Holt. Evan wiped sweat from his face, purge it. He hissed, erase her fingerprints, build a new safety kernel. That takes weeks. The tech replied. You have until morning. Meanwhile, I walked along the bay, cold water, blue sky. I skipped a stone, 3 skips, not bad. I checked my phone once. Logs were stacking up. Syntax errors, loop failures. Desperate patches. They were trying to learn a language I'd invented. Without grammar. I felt a pang, not for Evan, for the machines, for Carlos, probably mopping fluid at double shift. But the lesson had to hurt. If I stepped in now, Evan would claim victory. No. This needed consequences. By Wednesday morning, the factory resembled a failing ICU. Track 2 was dead. Track 1 limped at half speed. Evan looked a decade older. We deleted her profile. The IT lead said, but on reboot it restores itself. That's impossible, Evan snapped. It's the architecture. The tech explained. The kernel checks for a master signature. If missing, it restores from a protected partition. And the signature. Marion's encryption token. She didn't just write patches. The tech continued. She wrote the bootloader. A veteran technician finally spoke. You don't want a factory reset, son. Evan ignored him. I don't care about 1999. Evan yelled, I have a cloud backup. The cloud backup that never synced. The tech asked quietly. Evan froze, then do it. He whispered, reset everything. The command executed. The screens went black, lights cut out, silence, then a message appeared, admin ghost. Did you just try to erase my brain, Evan? That was rude. The room panicked. She's watching us. Someone whispered. She's not a ghost. The veteran said, grabbing his coat. She built the house. You tripped the alarm. I wasn't laughing. I was eating grapes. The notification blinked. System status. Offline. He'd nuked the site. No old system, no new system. Just millions in silent steel and a board meeting tomorrow. It was time, Thursday 7:00 a.m. The factory had been dark for 16 hours. Trucks idled. Gates wouldn't open. The supply chain was collapsing. My phone rang. It was Carlos, Marion. He said urgently, you need to answer. He's lost control. I'm here. I said calmly, what's happening? Please, he said. Just try. He's doing it the stupid way. Javier said, his voice shaking. He's trying to defeat the digital lockouts manually. My back went straight. He hired an overnight crew, temporary contractors. They're inside the main power enclosure right now. They're bypassing the control logic and feeding the main line directly. I felt my stomach drop. Manually jumping the bus, I said, that's 460 volts, Javier. If they reverse the phase order, I warned him. Javier cut in. If the phases flip, every motor spins backward. Pumps, exhaust fans, everything. The presses will try to lift instead of compress. The whole facility could tear itself apart. Where are you? I pulled my people out. We're at the far end of the lot. I'm not burying my crew so he can pad his quarterly bonus. My blood went ice cold, but the early shift. I asked, they're still inside, break room, waiting for power. That wasn't just equipment damage anymore. That was a death trap, reverse. Running ventilation would suck fumes back into the building. One mistimed press cycle could turn steel into shrapnel. Put him on, I said. He smashed his phone when the board called again. Fine. I couldn't physically stop him. I couldn't log into the servers. He'd wiped them clean, but there was something he didn't know about. Buried below the OS, below the backups of the backups. A hard-coded failsafe I'd written years ago after a hostile takeover scare. A dead man protocol tied directly into the emergency cellular channel. One command, no login required. It would trigger a physical breaker lockout. It would vaporize the industrial fuses. It would cost roughly $18,000 in hardware, but it would shut everything down before someone died. Javier, I said calmly, get everyone behind the outer fence. What are you about to do? I'm killing the building. I ended the call. I opened my phone and selected a contact saved years ago. Northridge main bus, a cellular modem wired directly into the master breaker vault. I typed one word, no punctuation, no emotion. Execute. I hesitated for half a second. I pictured him inside the cage, sweaty, desperate, yelling at a contractor to jam copper into live terminals. Then I hit send. Message delivered. 300 meters away, deep inside the steel ribcage of Northridge Manufacturing, a relay snapped shut. Click, then boom, not fire, not flames, the sound of 3 industrial fuses detonating simultaneously. The lights across the lot flickered once, then died. The backup generators choked and fell silent. What followed wasn't quiet. It was absolute nothing. A factory-sized corpse. My phone rang instantly. Holy hell. Javier said. The entire substation blew. Smoke's pouring out of the power shed. Everyone okay? Yeah. Contractors ran out screaming. They think the panel exploded. It didn't. I said, draining my coffee. It hard. Tripped. You can't hotwire molten copper. You saved them. He breathed. Good. I said, because the owner just pulled up. The black sedan had stopped at the gate. Let him see the smoke. The plant was offline, crippled, bleeding money by the second, but no one was dead. Modernization was over. Cleanup was next. And cleanup requires someone who knows where the broom is hidden. A Tier 1 supplier doesn't measure losses in hours. They measure them in seconds. At Northridge, downtime burned about $92 per second. By the time the smoke cleared, missed shipments, $165,000 contract penalties, $88,000 destroyed fuses and switchgear, $61,000 that last number. Purely his fault. The owner, Mr. Callahan, stood staring at the charred substation door. Next to him stood the modernization director, blackened with soot, looking like a failed magician. Explain, Callahan said quietly. It was sabotage. The man panicked. She hacked us. This is criminal. I spoke to the fire marshal. Callahan interrupted. He said the system detected an illegal phase reversal. Those fuses saved the building. Without them, the presses would have exploded. Silence. You didn't get hacked, Callahan said. You were stopped from killing people. He turned to security. You're done here. Leave before I see how much I can sue you for. The man didn't argue. He just walked away. Callahan turned to Javier. Can we restore power? Yes, Javier said, but the control logic is gone. Machines don't know who they are anymore. Callahan closed his eyes. Unless you call the architect. My phone rang at 10:40 a.m. I let it go. Again at 10:45. Voicemail at 10:52. A text arrived. Name your terms. I waited 10 minutes, then replied, I don't work here anymore. I consult. My rate is triple, and I want a written apology to the machines. The reply came instantly. Agreed. When can you arrive? 3 hours. Don't touch anything. I didn't rush. Stopped for coffee. Listened to an audiobook. When I reached the gate, the guard saluted me. Literally, welcome back, ma'am. Inside, flashlights lit the server room. The drives are empty. IT whispered, the visible ones. I corrected. I pulled a small USB from my pocket, plugged it in, green light, restore. Screens flickered. Legacy signature found, architect image, verified code, cascaded like rain. The plant remembered itself. 2 weeks later, production hit 91% capacity. The cloud project was dead. Local control restored. The machines trusted us again. At the floor meeting, Callahan spoke plainly. I forgot that experience can't be downloaded. Then he looked at me. She answers only to me. Applause echoed through steel. I stepped forward. One more thing. I said, you owe her an apology. I pointed to line 7. He hesitated, then placed a hand on the safety cage. I'm sorry. The machine completed a flawless cycle. Accepted. Legacy doesn't mean outdated. It means survived, and some systems don't need replacing. They need respect.